A brother and sister have been reunited after the wreckage of a ship that was torpedoed during World War II was located around 100 kilometres off Victoria's south coast. Bill and Beryl became orphans when their father died in the attack way back in 1942. Their mother had died years earlier and the pair was split up. When the wreckage was found just a few years ago, the pair were eventually able to be reunited. And Bill Stewart joins us now from Sydney. Bill, g'day. Thanks so much for having a chat to us. This is a story with a beautiful ending, but there were many lost years. I want to take you back to the 1940s. What do you remember of those early years that you did have with your sister, both at home, but you were also at an orphanage with your sister while your dad was at sea?
That was correct, yes. We were both in the orphanage because Dad was on a merchant ship and he was going backwards and forwards from Port Kembla to Sydney and other ports in between, and we had no one else to look after us. There was no other family members there, apart from a stepsister who was left and went back to Sydney. So the two of us was there. We were both young. I was about 8 years old or 5 years old when it happened, and Beryl would only have been 2. Beryl has no recollection at all of either of her parents. I vividly remember my dad because I was, 3 years older. If I had a photo of Dad, or if I saw a photo of Dad, I'd recognise him straight away. Beryl would not. She was too young to remember. She doesn't remember much about our childhood, about the sinking of the Iron Crown. When I explained that to her, she thought that we'd been put in an orphanage and no one cared. Our dad didn't care about us.
Oh, right.
Well, when I explained to her what happened, she understands now exactly what happened, why we were in the orphanage and why she was taken from me.
Yeah, and Bill, so you were separated from Beryl when you were just 11. How tough was that, losing your dad at the time and then your sister being adopted out and separated from you?
Oh, it was devastating because I had no one then, and Beryl virtually had no one. She was eventually adopted by a family. I was never adopted. So when I went to Boys Town, or when Beryl was adopted, I was moved to Boys Town, which is a boys-only place in Adelaide, similar to the one in Sydney. And from there, I was there until I was 14. At the age of 14, you were automatically moved from Boys Town into a Catholic family. You had no choice. So I was moved into a Catholic family. By the time I was 19, I realised that I had no one in Adelaide that cared about me. So I had 2 friends from England who I'd befriended when they were on the 5-pound voyage from England to Australia. I befriended them. They were the only friends I ever had. I never went to a movie. I never went to a football match. I never went anywhere.
Wow.
I was just worked in this private family's house.
And Bill, can you take us back to that moment when you were separated from Beryl? Have you got a clear memory of that?
Well, when I was separated from Beryl, I remember the nun calling me into the room and saying, and then Beryl was with me, and then the nun said to me, "Bill, your sister is about to be adopted in a few minutes. The adopted parents are on their way to pick her up." And I realised then that I'd never seen my sister again.
So that was it, yeah. So that was an incredibly tough moment. And so when you were in your 20s and 30s, Did you have strong memories of her, and did you think you would see her again? Did you have a photo or a memento?
Absolutely nothing.
Wow.
And she had no photos. We never had any photos. She doesn't even remember what her mother looked like. I remember what my dad looked like, but I don't know what my mother looked like either. My mother was put into hospital with pneumonia when in 1935. So I was only 5 years old. Beryl was only 2. So she has no recollection of her mother. I don't have any recollection of my mother. I have a vivid recollection of my dad because he lasted some years later.
And
but
so when you got into your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, did you think you would ever see Beryl again?
Well, I never gave up hope. Never ever gave up hope. Every year I either rang the orphanage to try and get the definite information where Beryl was. They kept refusing me information. They would not tell me. So I just kept persevering as the best I could. I thought one day I'll never give up hope. And that's what happened. And Beryl, in the meantime, I found out when I found her that she was also looking for me.
Wow.
And she had the same problem. The orphanage wouldn't give her any details of where I was. She actually came to Sydney on several occasions to see a friend she knew, who was only a mile or two from where I lived.
Wow.
I could have easily have gone and seen her and gone out with her. That wasn't to be.
And so in 2019, your dad's ship was found off the coast of Victoria and there was a memorial held. Did you attend the memorial or what happened?
Oh, yes, too right, I attended the memorial. I was the first one to put my hand up. As soon as I knew they found the Iron Crown, I rang the Maritime Museum in Sydney and told them who I was. And they made sure I got an invite to go down there.
Okay,
and
so
that's
what?
Where
so
I met
what?
the curator.
Yeah.
I met the curator of the Maritime Museum, Emily Jattev, who was absolutely wonderful to me. She guided me through the memorial when I was being interviewed by the ABC. She was absolutely wonderful.
And so how did that end up leading to you being reconnected with Beryl?
Well, what happened after the interview with the ABC, a woman rang the ABC and wanting to get my phone number. She said DNA matched mine. Well, the television station, they didn't have the information, so they contacted the Maritime Museum and spoke to Emily. Emily immediately rang me and said, Bill, there's a woman who claims to be a relative whose DNA matches yours. Would you like her phone number? I said, yes, please. She immediately gave me Kylie's phone number. And I rang my granddaughter, Natalie. She came straight over. She lives nearby. And the two of us sat down and rang Kylie. And Kylie, we spoke to Kylie and we soon realised that Kylie's DNA was in fact a match with mine and she was related to me. Now, Kylie happened to be a voluntary researcher where she lives in Coffs Harbour. And she immediately said, Bill, I'll look for Beryl for you.
Wow.
Sorry.
And so I realise this is incredibly tough for you to go through this, but it is a story with a beautiful ending, and it's upsetting for us to see you in that state. Now. But we do get to the beautiful ending. Yeah. And so how did Kylie end up making the connection with Beryl?
Well, Kylie put to make a long story short, Kylie found out that Beryl was still in Adelaide, and she started looking in the local Port Adelaide newspapers for information on Beryl. And she found some wonderful information, photos of Beryl when she was going right up to the age of 21, but she could find nothing on Beryl after the age of 21. So I knew the Adelaide papers. One was the Mail and the Sunday Mail, and there's a little column in the Sunday Mail, "Can we help?" And Kylie immediately put a letter to that "Can we help" section. And sure enough, Beryl happened to read this. She always gets the Sunday Mail.
No way.
And she saw the letter in there.
Wow.
And as soon as she saw the letter, she realised it was me looking for her.
Wow. And so what was that like when did you end up calling her or she called you?
No, well, Kylie, she rang Kylie because Kylie had put her phone number in there. She immediately rang Kylie and told Kylie who she was. Kylie told me she nearly fell off the chair when Beryl rang, because she was the last person she expected to ring her. She thought maybe some relative might ring, but in fact it was Beryl. And Beryl said, "I'm Beryl Johnson, niece Stewart. I read your note that you wanted to ring me." And then Kylie and Beryl started having a conversation, and that's how it started. What? And then Kylie rang my granddaughter Natalie, who's sitting here with me now, and told Natalie that they'd found Beryl. Natalie immediately rang me and said, "Pa, Glenn, that's my stepson, and I will be at your place in 10 minutes or 5 minutes. I'll be at my place in 5 minutes." They said, "We've got news on Beryl." They didn't tell me what the news was. They just turned up almost simultaneously in about 5 minutes. And Natalie sat alongside of me like she's doing at the moment, and she said, "Pa, we've got some wonderful news on Beryl. She's alive, and I've spoken to her." Well, I just cried for a minute, and I composed myself. And then Natalie said to me, "You'll be talking to your sister in 10 minutes at 10 o'clock. And that's what happened. Kylie came online and said, "Bill, your sister, hang on a minute while I hook Beryl up to you." And then Kylie came back on and said, "Say hello to your sister, Bill." I said, "Hello, Beryl."
Wow. And so, Bill, explain for us what it was like hearing her voice for that first time in, was it 80 years?
Yeah, and that was the first time in 80 years I'd heard from her. And she'd look for me and I'd look for her for 80 years. We couldn't find her because the orphanage wouldn't give us any information. But as soon as she spoke to me, I said, "Beryl, where are you?" She said, "I'm in Sturt in Adelaide." I said, "I'll be in the first plane there."
Wow.
And my family who were with me said, "And we're coming too." So the first plane we could get, we hopped on it and went to Adelaide. And we went straight to Beryl's place. And I was looking at Beryl because there's about 11 separate little units there in the block. They're all ground floor. And I'm walking along the passageway trying to find the number 11. And the family's back with their cameras up, ready to take a photo of us as we hugged each other. And I couldn't see number 9. Number 9 where she lives. No, number 11 where she lives. And I called out Beryl, and the door opened and she came flying out, put her arms around me, and we kissed and hugged each other.
Wow, it's such an
and
amazing...
we went inside.
That's such an amazing
And my family
story.
taken all these photos, and they went viral. People around Australia and in Singapore and New Zealand saw the photos, and we got phone calls galore. Now, I could only stay with Beryl for 3 days because the COVID thing came back on, and they blocked off Adelaide from anyone. So we had to immediately leave after 3 days and come back to Sydney.
Yeah.
Well, then I couldn't get Beryl to come to Sydney because she hadn't had her COVID shots. So I just had to wait till she had the 2 COVID shots, which took, quite a year or more, 18 months. And then as soon as she had her COVID shots, I organised for her to fly to my place in Sydney. And she spent 3 weeks with me. And that was a wonderful 3 weeks. Really a lovely time.
And tell us, Bill, tell us...
Every morning since I ring her at 8 o'clock in the morning, and she's waiting for my call. And when I ring, she answers the phone and says, "Hello, my darling Bill. Hello, my darling brother." I say, "Hello, my darling sister." And we yak every day, every morning.
Oh, you're killing me, Bill. How does it feel knowing that your father died in tragic circumstances, but the discovery of the ship that he died on led to this reunification between you and your sister?
Oh, well, I've had to explain to my sister the details of how Dad died because, she had no memory or no recollection. She actually thought we'd been deserted by Dad. Now, I had to explain to her that didn't happen, that Dad used to come and visit us. And right up to the time until he died, he kept coming and visiting us in the orphanage. Yeah. So I had to explain that to my sister. And she fully understands now. She fully understands. Yeah. So, she has no problems now.
And so, Bill, what's your advice to people who might be watching this who are still searching for a brother or sister or a long lost friend?
Well, never give up hope. Always have hope and always keep trying to find your brother or your sister or your family member, just like I did. Even though I was getting no help from the orphanage, I never stopped looking. I kept going back to Adelaide looking. I couldn't find her, of course, but I never gave up. And the last resort was to get my DNA done, and it was the DNA that Kylie matched mine. And I sent the DNA to the, people who do that, and that's how Kylie found me. And that's what brought us back together. And also, I've not only found my sister, but my sister found her adopted relatives after that DNA was found. Okay. So she now sees her adopted relatives regularly, not her mum and dad, of course, but her adopted sister. She went to a meal with her on a couple of days ago in Adelaide. They see each other now.
At least there's such a beautiful ending to this, Bill. When you have your daily chat to Beryl tomorrow morning and she says, "G'day, darling," and you say, "G'day, my beautiful sister," send a big hello from us at the ABC as well. It's been such a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, I missed that last bit.
It's been such a pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much for your time.
Oh, a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for ringing me. And thanks for doing the TV thing. I appreciate it. My family do.
Great stuff.
Thanks a lot.
Bill Stewart there in Sydney.
Bye. Thanks.
Oh, I'm not crying. You're crying.